You're listening to Today. I'm Xu Qingduo with Ben Liang. To bring us Wednesday's business stories, here is Zhao Yang.
Well, thank you, Qingduo. Let's now check out some of the key events on the corporate front in China and around the world this week. Joining me on the line is Jeffrey Towson, Professor of Investment at Peking University Guanghua School of Management. Arguably, the biggest business story of the last week was Facebook's $19 billion acquisition of WhatsApp. This acquisition, through a combination of cash and stock, constituted nearly 10% of Facebook's equity. This is a very large acquisition, so which implies it has a great importance for Facebook. But Jeff, actually, my first question is about WhatsApp, which was founded just 5 years ago, and it has now 450 million users, making it the largest messaging application in the world. So why was Facebook willing to pay so much? Is it worth it?
Right. I think that the key issue on this mega deal, and this is a mega deal by any measure, is that social media, of which Facebook is the giant in the West, is moving from PCs to smartphones. That's the big story in this. And Facebook basically needs WhatsApp to make that transition. So price, which appears to be high by most standards, doesn't appear to be the primary issue. And it turns out the interesting thing about this is social media on phones turns out to be very, very different than what we're used to. Facebook was very good on PCs. It dominated. They call it the social network effect. All your friends are on the service, so you have to be on the service. And if you switch to another service, your friends aren't there. So people don't switch. It was kind of a winner-take-all market, and Facebook won it all in the West. But when you look at phones like WhatsApp or Wechat, it turns out Facebook's strengths don't really protect it. You don't need the network because all your contacts are in your phone. And it turns out you can have WhatsApp, WeChat, and 3 others all running at the same time, and it works quite well. So, Facebook was sort of buying their way into the game a little bit late. There was a strategic purchase. I don't think price was the primary issue at all, but they kind of missed a big part of the social media market of phones. And I think one issue which nobody's talking about, which is fascinating, is this acquisition basically means WhatsApp is owned by Facebook, and their number one competitor is WeChat, which is owned by Tencent. So we're about to see something we've never seen before. We're going to see a head-to-head global fight between the largest American social media company and the largest Chinese social media company. We've never seen this before.
And Jeff, you mentioned very interesting points that Facebook and Tencent, they are effectively going head-to-head in direct competition for the first time. And both of their apps are side-by-side on smartphone screens. And this is a fight, of course, for users everywhere. So how could this play out globally? Could one dominate, and will they coexist?
You've definitely got two giants. We've never seen these two companies go head-to-head. WeChat has about 300 million users, and that's just the last 3 years. They're dominant in Asia. WhatsApp has 450. They're pretty big in the West in places like Brazil and India. And it turns out these services, instant messaging, cross borders like almost no other service. It really makes no difference where you are. You can use them anywhere. Now, my own opinion on this is Silicon Valley should be very, very scared of Tencent. WeChat, their messaging program is like the 5th most used smartphone app in the world, not just instant messaging, out of all of them. And they're going after the West in a very aggressive way. They made an offer, I think it was 3 months ago, that really got people's attention. They said, if you're a U.S. user or a foreign user and you sign up for WeChat, you get 10 terabytes of free cloud storage. So, they're coming on very aggressively. And I've studied this company for quite a while and how successful they've been in online gaming, which they've already very active in the U.S. in online gaming. I'd be afraid of them.
So this is going to be very fascinating to watch the competition, but where's your money on?
I would bet on Tencent, and I'll say it for two reasons. Number one, they're incredibly aggressive. They're incredibly competitive. Facebook, for the most part, has never really had intense competition. It was a winner-take-all market. They got there first. They've really never fought for their survival before. Tencent kind of came out of China, which is a very, very competitive internet market. But that's just a guess. I mean, who knows? These are both mammoth companies. Maybe they'll coexist. You never know.
Okay. And in another story, in recent weeks, a $126 million trust product issued by Jilin Province Trust has failed to repay their investors. This has raised the specter of a shadow banking product defaulting, and this comes just weeks after a similar shadow banking almost default happened in January. So, Jeff, these are really the first trust defaults in China, and the Jilin one is the second one in 1 month. So is this a aberration, or are we seeing the start of a default trend in shadow banking? Can we expect more?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is yes. I think it's pretty clear. I don't like to make predictions, but it's pretty clear we're going to see a lot more of this. The January problem you mentioned was a trust product. It was, people give their money to the trust product loans it to a company. In this case, it was Shanxi Energy Company, and that company has since collapsed. So basically, people lost their money, but that situation was actually cleared up. It was reported the government was involved, the people got their money out. They lost a couple interest payments, but they got their principal. This new one, which has just come up in the last week or so, is pretty similar. It's money loan. The loan to the company was bad. I think we're going to see a lot of these. We don't have a lot of visibility into what loans have been made, but we do have a lot of good visibility into the fact that these things are all coming due this year. A lot of them are. Perhaps 40% of these sort of shadow banking trust products are going to have to refinance or come to maturity in 2014. So we know they're coming. We just don't know how many are good and how many are bad.
But you mentioned that in the Shanxi case, the local government involved and helped to solve the problem. But if we have repeated defaults, should they be worked out similar to the Shanxi situation? And doesn't this create a moral hazard with investors and investment companies taking excessive risk because they don't see the consequences?
Right. The moral hazard is a term you hear in the U.S. and Europe a lot. If the rules are set a certain way, won't people take advantage of that, make riskier loans than they should have, and then not worry about it? I don't really think that's a problem in China. I don't think these loans are being made because it was a moral hazard. I just think there's a saying that good times breed bad habits. We haven't seen a lot of defaults in the last 10 years, so there's probably a lot of bad habits that have accumulated. But in China, if the government makes a very clear statement that, look, we're not going to support any more of these that are made, I think people will get the message almost immediately and, change behaviors. It's a little bit of a unique thing about China. I think you don't have to worry about that as much as, say, the U.S.
But the real issue here is that the capital allocation should be modernized across the country, right?
Right. Underneath all of this is a very, very big, not problem, but big challenge that the banking system has functioned one way, state banks, and capital allocation loans were not made too rigorously. But the system has been built now, which is great. And I think that's probably the big challenge for the next 5 to 10 years for China across the board, is just to modernize the whole system of capital allocation.
Okay, and the final story, the Mobile World Congress, actually, 2014 is held in Barcelona now, with mobile leaders like Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg and Lenovo's Yang Yuanqing attending. It is also an event where big announcements are made, such as the release of Samsung's Galaxy 5. But Jeff, have there been any surprise in this Congress? For example, Lenovo CEO made a fairly bold statement about his company turning Motorola around in 6 quarters.
Right. These conferences do tend to have sort of big announcements, and that was one I think people got. They got their attention. The CEO of Lenovo basically said they're going to turn around Motorola in 4 to 6 quarters, and this is a company that was owned by Google and is now being sold from Google to Lenovo. Although it hasn't been approved yet, but it's working its way through the process. That kind of statement was pretty bold. And he said a couple other things on that. He said, we're going to do this, but we're not going to do it by eliminating jobs. And he made a good point, which I thought was, he said, look, Google's really good at software and services, but Lenovo's really strong in manufacturing. And that's a pretty convincing argument. I mean, my thinking is, look, if Lenovo can't turn around Motorola, who could? I mean, if they can't do it, it probably can't be done. But this is all sort of pending regulatory approval.
Unfortunately, for this conference, not only Lenovo but also Huawei, ZTE, all of them are at the conference, and it appears that they're pushing hard to become strong globally, not just in Asia, right?
Right. I mean, this is something I look at a lot, is Chinese companies sort of maturing and then becoming international companies. And this is something I think you see at the conference, is Huawei, Lenovo, ZTE, which are all top smartphone makers, although they're not one or two. I mean, they're all going global, and they're pushing. And my own thinking is, look, everyone wants to be the next Samsung. They want to be the next manufacturing company that came out of Asia and then became a global leader, not just in manufacturing, but in devices, services, expertise. And I think that's sort of the high bar everyone's aiming for here.
Well, thank you, Jeff Towson, Professor of Investment at Peking University Guanghua School of Management.
Thank you, Jeffrey, and thank you, Zhao Yang, as well. Up next, Stairways to Heaven, of sorts.